We also had high school students, namely, oh, what's the guy's name? Uh, the guy with the bicycle,
Wait, what?
the guy with the bicycle club.
Oh, David Pettit.
David Pettit,
Yep.
and he and his group went around and put a bunch of ribbons on there. Winans, me and Lisa went out there and we did a little presentation and we took the kids out around the block and tied ribbons around a bunch of trees. Kind of fun. And then special recognition, Vicki Blakeman was the one who came up with the idea. Emily posted the grant writing. She made sure we had the ribbons. She came up with the brochures, and she also provided us maps of pretty bad menace to our trees. The city of Livingston has 1770 ash trees. That's the number. It's 46% of all ash trees, about half of them. So mortality rate from this pest year is 99 to 100% in 5 years. So when that borer hits us, I didn't say if, it's when, it's going to wipe out 46% of our trees. Uh, most tree professionals tell you it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It's reached South Dakota now, last year in Sioux Falls. There's a little area in Boulder, Colorado that's isolated. Everything else around it is clear of the borer, but that one area, they figured somebody brought in some firewood from somewhere and started that thing going. So it could happen here. Somebody come in with some firewood, or they could just travel eventually. But anyway, that's the size of the little bug there. It's less, it's smaller than the size of a penny, and those little holes are D-shaped. That's the telltale sign of a ash borer. The Tree City of the Year Award 2015, we hosted the Arbor Day celebration. We had booths and displays. We had the high school band performing. Governor Steve Bullock was here giving a speech, and we planted a tree designated the Tree City of the Year tree. In 2015, we also hosted the Northern Rockies Tree School in RTS. Um, we had over 150 participants, 3-day event, came from all over the region and from all over the states. So the benefits to the community was that we showcased Livingston's great attractions. A lot of people had never heard of Livingston, now they know about it. We had a boost to the local economy. We had the folks that were participating here wear their name tags so they could, when they were walking around town, so people in the community knew where their people were spending money. Um, we had local businesses and vendors set up their demonstrations in the Pioneer Lodge there where we had the event. We had silent raffle that Lisa, myself, and Mel went around and collected donations for, and also from the other members in the school, and then went into our tree board fund, 1250. We also had proceeds from NRTS to the tree board, 6885. However, that money went missing. If we still can't find it, somewhere in the general fund. We did the Kata Barnell park tree planting. This is a grant that Melody, our old grant writer, wrote up. And so it was Livingston's basically mostly ash trees, so we wanted to kind of spread the wealth around a little bit, get different species of trees out there. And the reason we chose the spruce trees out there is to kind of block the wind. It's kind of out in the open area. And also, if you look behind the picture there, you see a lot of industrial look there. So we want something that will keep the view kind of obscured and provide a windbreak. So the Arbor Day celebration, we kind of combined it with a park dedication. And there's Katie herself. She was born without arms and legs. She graduated from high school here in Livingston, and she passed away when she was 23. The dedication ceremony we held out there at the park. Kevin Larkin is the one that came up with the drive to rename the park, and that's him underneath the tent. We also got Eric down there by the tent, and the guy with the green vest is our own Mel Friedman. And we also have two more commissioners down there, including Quentin. One of the problems we have with trees here in Livingston or any other city is that people plant trees that are not suitable for use underneath power lines. And this is one of the streets where it's really bad, down the West Geyser Street. And so Eric Snyder wrote up a grant Go ahead. To replace those trees. And so it was approved, and I forget what the price was, or what the what they gave us. But with that money and some of the city's own, uh, he was able to cut down a bunch of those ash trees, which were looking pretty bad, and replace them. And Lisa and myself put our green vests on, and we went around and knocked on doors and talked to homeowners and handed out brochures about the ash borer. That's a few less trees that we have to worry about. So there's, I think I counted like 13 trees that have been planted there, in addition to removing the old ash trees and grinding on stumps down. We've done the Arbor Day celebrations for all these years. Again, that's part of the requirement for being Tree City, the Tree City USA. Last year we did Mike Webb Park. We had kids from St. Mary's School. We have Jody there in the top left picture, and then there's me and Eric and Andy back here, and Lisa reading the proclamation. We have usually have the kids shovel in the dirt after the hole's been prepped and everything. Kind of makes them feel like they're, it's their tree. And we also, that same year, we did a Winans Elementary School presentation. Um, Lisa and I, and I don't remember who else was there. We went out there and did a little presentation, and then planted two trees. And the neat thing we did was we had Ace donate a bunch of little um, bedding plants and potting soil, and we had the kids repot all these little flowers and stuff, and for their mothers, because this is around Mother's Day, and they went home with all these little flowers and stuff. This year's Arbor Day celebration will be at the Katie Bunnell Park on North Am Street. This going to be this Friday. Everybody here is invited to attend. 1 o'clock. Back a little bit. And we had a little problem with the trees that we planted in 2017. Some lady came around and cut them off, 5 of them. She wanted to sell them for Christmas trees. I guess she thought it was just okay. So there's 5 trees that have been butchered out there. We'll replace 2 of them with the money we got for the Arbor Day grant, and then the 2 will have to be replaced later. Concerned about our forest, of course, there's possibility of damage to property and people. This one happened on Lewis Street. Um, Eric's crew had to get, he got on it to get this tree cut down and the one next to it because they were both in pretty bad shape. You can see what it did to that Subaru sitting there. You can tell it's Subaru because it's green. And so he took care of that tree. Next one. This one here, a lot of trees that back in the days that thought the topping was a good thing for the tree because it made them bush out and look nice, but it's actually a pretty bad practice we found out. And this, go back a little bit. So this one was topped. A lot of trees by the lagoon were topped at the time they were shortly after they were planted, so kind of shortens their lifespan, makes them weak. That branch fell down. Luckily, there's nobody down there. Would have hurt somebody real bad. Okay. The other problems we have is deer and wildlife, including beavers. We have mower damage, weed eater damage. That's a pretty bad one. Weather vandalism. That tree on the left there, that was one of the Arbor Day trees. We planted 3 Arbor Day trees for that when Steve Bullock was here. Luckily, that's not the Arbor Day tree, but that one's dead. If you girdle a tree like that, it kills it. Same thing with the mower on the right. Weed eaters, whatever. One of the recent things that came up was the line of sight issues. I know you might have read in the editorials, the letters to the editor about this guy concerned about the trees being cut down. Well, they went around and marked these trees that were within 35-foot intersection distance with red paint, just to show that the ones that were in that area. We went out there and then did a walking tour to see what the problems were. Found out that the trees really don't have much of a obstruction of the view, even the ones that are within 35 feet. So needless to say, we won't be cutting those down. If we did, then we'd have a lot of political backlash there and not have to leave town. But one of the things that the tree board came up with, that intersection there, used to have those shrubs there. And there's actually a car behind the shrub. And you couldn't see what was around the corner until you came around the corner. You can see whether the light was red or green or anything. This is on Park and B Street. So we had those those shrubs cut down. Now you can get a clear line of sight. But there are some places in town that's going to have to happen. There's shrubs or trees that might have to be cut down, but it's not going to be 42 trees. So another problem we got to look at is funding for tree maintenance removal. Eric's got some local arborists cutting trees down at a pretty reasonable price, but the city crews still have to go around and clean up the stuff themselves. So it's time and money that you got to spend there. So planning for the future, we got to look at revising the city ordinance, chapter 23. And we got to look at see who's responsible for the trees on the boulevard. Is the city going to keep on, maintaining them at their expense, or are we going to get the citizens involved? How are we going to pay for that? We're working on the bylaws. Plan for the arrival of the Emerald Ash borer, which, like I said before, it's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. And when it does, it's cost too much to try to save the trees. So like other communities, you might have to pick and choose which ones you want to save, and most of them will have to be cut down. One of the problems we have too, of course, everybody else does too, is the code enforcement. We got all these codes that are not enforceable. That's why we see people planting trees in the 35-foot right of way, and trees that aren't suitable for under power lines and so forth and so on. And we also got to find ways to fund the maintenance of our forest. So, okay. Any questions?
Thank you, Mike. Any questions from the commission? No, thank you for your service. And if you don't know Mike Gomez, he does a lot for our parks and trees in especially Sacagawea, Van Shell area. So thank you. Next on our agenda is one public hearing. Public hearing, Barbara Burns request for variance from the provisions of Chapter 30 zoning of the Livingston Municipal Code. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So before we start the public hearing, we'll have Jim from the planning department come up and present the staff report for the variance request, and then we can go to the public hearing from there.
This is a variance for Barbara Burns. The address of her home is 1018 East Geyser Street, and she's requesting a variance from the side setback requirement for R2 mobile home zoning districts. She wishes to build a garage and a storage addition onto her existing home that would match the current side setback of approximately 3 feet from Geyser Street. Code requires a 10-foot setback on the side of a property adjacent to a street. Livingston Code stipulates that the following questions shall be considered by the city in making decisions regarding variance requests. Number 1, are there special conditions and circumstances existing which are peculiar to the land, the lot, or something inherent in the land which causes hardship and which are not applicable to other lands in the same district? Staff answer here was no. The hardship in this case stems from the fact that the original structure was built prior to the city adopting zoning. Number 2, will a literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts in the same zoning district? Staff answer was no. The side setback adjacent to a street for all properties in this area is 10 feet. Number 3, will granting this variance confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied by the ordinance to other land in the same district? Staff answer was yes. The existing structure is grandfathered. New construction is expected to comply with the current zoning. And number 4, will the granting of this variance request be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance? Staff answer was no. Staff believes that the intent of the ordinance is to provide minimum sight distances at street corners and alley approaches. Based on these staff findings, the zoning administrator feels that it's appropriate for the zoning commission to disapprove this variance request.
Thank you. We will now open this public hearing. on the, I should state what it is for the variance request. Please come on up. State your name and address.
I'm Barbara Burns and I live at 1018 East Geyser Street, and I do have a rebuttal to that. Can I hand this out to?
Thank you.
And I'm kind of glad that you did talk about the trees, because that is one of my agendas, because on the storm that we had on May 17th of 2017, I lost two huge trees. One was a huge 5-trunk tree, and I believe you have pictures of that. And there's two trees, if I did the setback, that would have to go, and I really don't want to have to cut two more trees down. I just had them trimmed by an arborist this last summer, and I would really like to keep them. And I did turn my application in last August 31st, so it's been a long, long time. And like I said, with the property, the first lot, oh, I didn't grab my. So the way my lot is set out, and I don't know if you guys, this is the only lot that's pretty level from here, and the two trees are right here that would have to go if I had to go back further. The rest of the lot has a huge slope that goes down this way. So, I mean, it's huge. So this is the only lot that is actually pretty level. And I don't have any sidewalks. There's a abandoned water building here in the middle of Geyser Street that goes to the trailer park. And so it goes to a one-way. There aren't sidewalks on my side of the street. There's a half a sidewalk on this side of the street. There's no sidewalks on L Street here, and L Street does not go through. And my sister owns this property and this property, and there's no other houses in the area. This is my existing house.
What is the building then? Is that the proposed? What is that?
That's a shed.
Okay.
It has a dirt floor. So, and then
And then where's the requested location according to that?
If you look on page 59,
right here in the there is bed and gravity drops and drawings of what it would look like.
thank you.
So this would be from the front. So this would be the existing house, and this would be the addition. And it's a small addition, it's not anything huge.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you for the information. Any other public comments? Come on up and state your name and address.
George Borneman, land surveyor, 310 South 8th Street, which just in support of Barb's request. I don't know if I can add too much more, but the place where she wants to build the garage, there's no street or site distance problems that the garage would cause by being closer to the street, because there's no street on the other side. It's just on the house is right on the alley. And then it's all just down to Fleshman Creek from her house. Down to the creek is where the garage would go. The ground does slope off some there, so it would be there'd be additional earthwork needed to if the garage had to go back, and then she would lose a couple of trees. So yeah, the topography is not real favorable to moving it back, but it's it.
Thank you. Come on up.
Esther Manhart, and I'm your neighbor. I live on 309 South L. Geyser Street's very, very popular for walking, for strollers, for kids, for the parents, and it's just a very busy corner down there. And just thinking that, in addition, I'm for the variance if there's a sidewalk and a curb put there, it would be great. Um, the sidewalk across from her property, um, it's very, very worn, and it's like walking through a jungle. If you have been across the street, it's not really suitable for parents and children, or kids with strollers to go through there. So it would be great if there was a curb and a sidewalk, and especially since you're considering the variance for for the dog park, and you're going to have more people parking down that way if there's if the city does get the variance through for where that in that area. Um, in in February, there was a car when we had that big snowstorm there. The car was parked on that street, and the heavy snow, when they came and they did the best, the city did a great job, by the way, when they plowed and did a good response to that. It still narrowed it down because there was a car that didn't move, and there's a little less land there. But if it was just, if you just took it from where the curb actually is, and then if there's a sidewalk and just right on the other side of the fence, that'd be great. Barbara's got a gate there, and I don't know who it is, but sometimes there's a semi parked in front of her gate. So if that area was more defined, she could have, that semi wouldn't be there at that time for that gate. And a lot of attention has been paid to from Geyser Street, from H to Park, with the sidewalks and all of that. But once you get past that, from H to L, there just hasn't been that attention, or you don't have the stop signs there like you do on once you get from H to the rest of the way down. So, but I think it's just an opportunity to think about this, a sidewalk and a curb there, because I certainly would be for that if that could be included for safety reasons. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Annette Burns, 423 and 421 South K Street. I own the property that the gate is on. And the semi, I believe, belongs to somebody at Geyser Trailer Park. Yeah. he just parks it there. And in front of where he parks, there's an abandoned old um, water testing building that's been hit by cars. I mow around it. I trim around it. Nobody pays any attention to it but me. And I wish it was gone. So I'd like to state that can that be taken away? Um, and when you look down from the city sidewalk, I used to do concrete work, so I'm pretty good about being able to see where the city sidewalk would go. Her house is in the way. The front steps up into her house are where the city sidewalk would be. And further down, L Street is abandoned, so it wouldn't even affect any um, traffic if she built on here. It wouldn't even go to L Street. I mean, it's a short piece of her property that adjoins mine. So if they were to put city sidewalks in there, they would have to come out anyway. And then when they put the new bridge in going to Geyser Trailer Park, they did not put any walkway into or out of the trailer park, which I didn't understand. I would think if they wanted, you know, they would have to have done something. And there's also the city turns into the county right in that area. So the old dike runs, the river used to run through our property. Yeah. So part of it's city, part of it's county. When we try to explain to people what we're talking about, it gets kind of mixed up and who's responsible for what. But it is a city testing building, water, that they've abandoned because it was, they couldn't test there anymore for some reason. There was diesel fuel in it, I understand, or something. So I'm all for her variance. And if I needed to pour a sidewalk somewhere in front of her house, I will. But, and put a curb if it could come out, because I mean, it has to because of her existing property anyway. So that's how I feel.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Google Earth up.
Don Platic, 229 South Yellowstone. I'm not sure this is working because I have a hard time hearing it, but I have terrible hearing anyways. So I commend the city. This is only the second time in many years that the law has been followed. So thanks to Mike and Jim for actually following the law on request for variances to zoning. So that very first question, that's the law. There has to be something peculiar to the property that makes it virtually impossible to comply with current zoning. That's the law. You've got legal counsel. You're welcome to ask and get guidance from them. The answer to it is no. So almost everything after that is a moot point. There has to be something peculiar that makes it virtually impossible to comply. That's not the case. There also, as heartless as this may seem, I think it was item C talked about financial difficulties. You know, I got to bring in fill dirt and so forth. But the courts have found that financial and economic conditions of property owners does not constitute a hardship. And again, you have legal counsel, feel free to ask them. So the law governs, there's no way this can legally be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? No, because it's a public hearing, he has his right to his statement. Okay, can you go closer? I need to try to get a visual. Lisa, can you go to the walking? Little yellow person?
Have the person walk up the street.
Yeah. Any other public comment before we close the public hearing? This public hearing on the variance request is closed.
Yeah, it's like a jungle. There's thorn bushes in the,
There we go. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Cardus, we'll start with you giving any more information to the commission.
I think the information you have is accurate. You can see that that is already well within the setback. If you continued in that setback, you're going to eliminate any chance for a sidewalk in the future. And that's why new construction is generally required to meet code, is so that if that house were someday to go away, new construction would then also meet the new setback, and you would have the opportunity to put a sidewalk in at that point, where you don't currently. You can't narrow the street to put the sidewalk in. The sidewalk has to remain at the width. Just for traffic concerns, it has to remain that wide. So that's not an option.
Lisa, can you go back to that last? I'm trying to get an understanding of the
Property line is. versus the
property
street.
line and then the site,
It's almost tells-
the sight line that is of concern as far as the 10-foot setback. We're at the river.
Going golfing.
I think we're at the golf course.
tour. I'm getting the tour.
Anyone great at Google Earth? That's all right. Yeah, it's not easy. And then especially without a mouse.
With everyone watching.
Mhm.
Did anybody else on the commission drive by and look at it?
I walked by there the other day.
Oh, okay.
So, Michael, tell us then, the request is to put it where in relationship to that?
So this is, let me make sure I'm oriented correctly. So if you look at the alley on the
Or on our,
right, so it would go to the left of the house there.
and then be flush with the house?
Yeah, it would be flush with the house. You can see where the sidewalk currently is on that side. That's actually where it should be. That's the proper location for the sidewalk. So that house should be about another 7 feet back, I think. Is that right, Jim? If it were to meet code. Right, so it should be an additional 7 feet deeper into the lot
By today's code.
by today's standards, not when it was built.
Not when it was built.
If sidewalk was added, it would be not the boulevard sidewalk. It would be a sidewalk that is street, on the edge of the street.
Right. If you were gonna, either that or you would have to just go around the house. Like jig around it.
Like, and
Yeah.
then come close to the street and then.
Right.
So the request is where that shrub is.
Yes. About 10 feet to the left of that, if I'm reading the plans right.
And 10 feet further from, right from the house over.
Yeah, 10 feet to the left of the house, even with it as a relation to the street is the request.
Anything else has to be 7 feet back of what you're seeing there of the
And-
building.
And if I can ask a question to George, is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
George, if you wouldn't mind answering, how far into the back of the left to right of the garage are the trees? So like if you, from the edge of the garage, how far into the garage are the trees left to right?
Well, the trees are in the back.
Yeah, but how far into the back? Like how far from the edge of the garage over?
Probably, 10, 15 feet.
Okay.
20, maybe there's 2 trees there, so maybe 120.
Because another option would be just to move it left and then back so you wouldn't have to take out the trees.
Right.
You just have to extend the breezeway at that point.
That's kind of what I saw when I walked it.
Okay. Well, commissioners, we have more questions or comments?
I have some questions. About sidewalks first. So, Michael, I thought somewhere on this journey together, I've seen some document about sidewalks in the city. Are there plans in the future for sidewalks in this neighborhood?
Ideally, long range, we would like sidewalks in all neighborhoods. That's why it's in the new building code. When you put up new construction now, sidewalks are required. We would like to add them to existing neighborhoods. Most of that is going to be based off of the neighborhoods themselves. It's probably going to have to be special improvement districts to put sidewalks in. We do have a sidewalk fund, and there are some options for places they don't exist or places where it would be difficult or odd. But in general, yes, the intent is to make it as walkable as possible, to have as many sidewalks as possible.
Can you? I'm not really clear on what you said about sidewalks, like where, should the day come where a sidewalk will be near this house on this property? Can you, I don't know if you're able to like sort of show, I feel like there's a distance for boulevard that's standard. And then I see where the existing sidewalk is, and I would have assumed that it would have just been extended straight. I can't remember the depth of boulevard. I know Jim has told me this before, but I don't remember.
Is it 4? How wide is the boulevard itself? 4 feet?
So the sidewalk would essentially, hypothetically in the future, something would have to be done about the entrance to the house, and the sidewalk would continue adjacent to that house, parallel to the curb, straight back to the, is that correct?
Right at the foundation.
Right. If the sidewalk was built exactly where it should be, it would just continue straight on.
Okay.
In this case, that probably wouldn't be possible until that house is no longer there. But that would be ideally where the sidewalk would be. That's the appropriate place for the sidewalk.
I've seen, because in this neighborhood, there's other properties that, and I'm guessing that they're also grandfathered in, but there's other properties that are directly adjacent to the sidewalk.
Right.
And I'm guessing some sidewalk repairs have happened sometime in the last, whatever, 80, 100 years, however long. So I don't know how long the sidewalk's been there. Okay. So is that front part where the fence is city land technically?
It would be city right away.
City right away.
Yes.
Okay. So if there was a sidewalk, it would go, something would have to be done with the fence as well
Yes.
someday, hypothetically.
Mhm.
Okay.
But can I
yeah.
ask? So I was asking about that same thing of the sidewalk then not running back. It would be forwards towards the curb, correct?
Yeah, and that's what I was confused of which scenario.
If we were going to build the sidewalk, it would go where it is. As it currently is, we'd have to do something around the house. Like, so there might be a section of sidewalk that was further out towards the curb
That jogs.
that jogs and then goes back to where it should be once it's past the house. That's an option. or we wait until there's enough room to actually put it where it should be. Those are the two options, really.
And it's a pretty obviously well-maintained home, so
So it would be a while.
so
Yeah.
maybe that will never happen. Yeah, yeah. Just hypothetically. And then, so the trailer park is county, right?
That's correct.
Do you have anything that you feel like we should know regarding this water building? And
Not in relation to this. I mean, that's a different topic if you want to talk about it. But it doesn't really relate to the variance.
Okay.
Because it's down past that trailer. Right. It's at the county line though, I think. So I don't know if the city sidewalk would go that far.
and then can you? So I'm a little bit confused about the lots. So are we talking? I think on one document it said lot 1, and on another document it says 1 through 5.
So if you look at page 59, so the lots aren't the property. The property is made up of 5 lots. So it does go from lot 1 through 5. But the construction they're looking at is they wanted to limit it to lot 1. But they have from lot 1 through lot 5 available.
And lots 1 through 5 are all the same property owner.
Yes, it's all one property.
Correct, correct. Okay, I just wanted to make sure since there was talk of neighbors and just making sure I was following that. The other thing that occurs to me, that was occurring to me about, can you, Lisa, one of the overhead maps is,
Melissa, will you turn your mic
yeah,
towards you
is
a
that,
little?
sorry, last week it was like feedback city, so I was trying not to have it too close because it was shrieking.
We fixed
Is that better? Thanks.
Yes.
The other thing I noticed was somewhat different with this property compared to the other ones along this alley is the direction that it faces. Everything else faces the alley. And this is the only one that faces Geyser, I think, on this little piece of land on this side of the creek. That just occurred to me because the last variance request, thinking about how things are oriented towards which street. And I was just thinking about that it's not on the corner, like that number 4 on the list. It's not on the corner of an intersection or alley, what they're asking for. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say about that other than that's on my mind as we're thinking about this property. I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you.
Let me clarify that, just make sure. Jim, on the setback on that, is it the side 10 foot? Is we consider this facing Geyser or facing the alley? Right. Yeah, so if it was the front, it would actually be 20 feet, correct? 25.
Okay, so this is
So-
the,
L Street is actually considered the front of the property.
okay,
So they're several hundred, 100 feet back from L Street, whatever it is. It's well over 25, but that's the 25-foot setback. So this, even though there's a door there, this is considered the side setback, which is the smaller one
okay.
of
Thank
10
you.
feet,
That's helpful. So L Street is considered the,
the front of the property.
so interesting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Questions?
I was just curious about, well, look at the diagram. You have in the alley is a garage. There's a fence that you see, and then you see the garage. Is that usable garage or is it storage garage or? That doesn't satisfy anything that you want to do. Okay, all right.
Any other commissioner questions, comments? So I do have one, at least, Michael, on, can you also, again, clarify some of the city's concerns that we have with this variance request? Obviously, we had it presented by Jim, but I'd like to get your feedback on the concerns that we have as a city and maybe expand on the disapprove
Sure.
reasons.
I think what it really comes down to is, according to the 4 questions, there's no specific hardship associated with this property, which is the standard. Yeah, certainly if you're coming out of this alley, the house is already in the way of the view, so that the garage wouldn't add to that, but it would if the house was moved or changed. And because there are other options on the property to build this, they could build it further down the street. They could tear down the other garage and build it where the current garage is. There's other options that they could do what they want without getting a variance. And so the standard city procedure is, if you don't require a variance, we don't hand it out. In this case. And so I guess that's kind of the philosophy behind it. If you want to look at the specific questions, there's nothing specific to this property that really constitutes a hardship. Yes, they would be required to put in some fill dirt, and depending on where they placed it, they may be required to cut down trees. It's not considered a hardship according to state law. If we literally interpret it, do we deny them the rights commonly enjoyed by other tracts? No. 10 feet is the setback. All the grandfathered structures are already grandfathered. All new construction is required to meet the 10-foot setback. So that is consistent in everything that we do across the city. Do we consider it a special privilege if we gave them this ordinance? Yes, because new construction is required to meet setback standards. This would be a special privilege not to have to meet those standards. So there would have to be a overriding reason to do that. And then, would it be in the general harmony with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance? The intent of the ordinance is to give you that setback. So you have both site distance and the ability to put in a sidewalk. You have the ability to put in city utilities if needed. And so that's the intent of the ordinance. The zoning ordinance in this case is what they're talking about, the 10-foot setback. And so, no, we don't think it's in harmony with the general purpose of the ordinance to allow another structure to be built inside of the setback requirement.
Right. Thank you. That is helpful information. Can you just turn the street view a little bit so we get it one last, like almost like we're turning around a bit to see down the street, both directions? Mm-hmm. If
So
you can
that's
do that.
east down Geyser, to the left would be east-ish, Railroad East.
It's going out.
Yeah, it's finicky.
There.
So that's east down Geyser towards the trailer park. There you can see past the trailer, that little white shed, what they're talking about, where that stop sign is. That's the old water well.
And that's the full property right there in the fence.
Yes.
Okay.
That's across the street. Continuation of the alley across the street.
Yeah, those sidewalks could be replaced.
And that's Railroad West. Down Geyser.
Michael, can you go up the alley too, next to the house? I think I did earlier.
On the
Yeah,
Google Maps,
yeah.
they go to Google
They sometimes they go up alleys. Not always, but they do sometimes. I think they went I think you can go up this alley on the Google Maps. Yep. Yay. So we can see what Mel was talking about.
There's the current garage structure, there's the rest of the back of the property. You can see this is the alley side, so there's only 5-foot setback required on this side.
What's the code today?
5 foot.
5 foot, okay.
So the alley side is 5 feet, 10 foot to the side, 25 feet to the front.
So they could go 25 feet to the wooden fence on the adjacent, the
10 feet.
opposites, or no, all the way on the Fleshman Creek side
Yes, 25 feet from that.
from that. Hypothetically.
And still meet code, yes.
And the property goes all the way. Lisa, can you spin down the alley? Yeah, the other way. So we can see how far down their property goes, like the lot, down to lot 5. Yep, thank you, yep. So the property goes all the way, do you know where lot 5 is?
To where that boat is.
50, 100, 100.
Yeah,
the
probably to
property line there?
the far side of the boat there. Yeah. More or less.
That's close enough.
All right. So
Thank you, Lisa.
do we have any last questions on it or statements? I'll state, one of my big concerns whenever we're looking at a variance, and I know we're new to it overall, but I worked in the planning world as well as a commissioner, is just when we set precedents. So I'm always concerned about setting precedents for how we're thinking in the future. And at this time, we have an ordinance that and requirements within our ordinance for a reason. So it's always one of those trying to balance the two, the request and the law. So just something that always worries me when I'm making decisions. So are we ready to move forward on the request? Right. Do we have a motion from the commission on request for variance? I have to get back. On resolution, nope, wrong one. On the request for variance from the provisions of chapter 3 or 30 zoning of Livingston Municipal Code.
Motion and
Positive.
affirmative,
I
correct?
would, if you want to make an affirmative motion, I would recommend moving to accept the staff recommendation.
Okay.
Or not.
Well, if you-
And then it goes
I
to
mean,
the
to-
vote.
Right.
Then you make the vote.
I make a motion to follow the staff recommendation. Right.
Except,
I accept the staff. I make a motion to accept the staff's report. There we go.
Second,
we have a motion by Schwartz and a second by Friedman. Roll call, please. Yeah,
Oh.
it's been a while since she's had to do this.
Yeah.
yes.
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 Motion passes. Moving on to ordinances. We don't have any ordinances tonight. We have one resolution. We have resolution number 4847, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Livingston, Montana, authorizing the city manager to sign a sub-recipient agreement for Community Development Block Grant Revolving Loan Fund with Park County MSU Extension Office. Mr. Cardews.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the fruition of the change in contracts for our revolving loan fund. Right now, we are set to transfer funds over to the Extension Office on May 8th. So this will be the final step. Once this is done, we will sign this contract, and then I will sign a letter to Prospera asking them to transfer the funds on the 8th. And we will be up and ready to start executing our new revolving loan fund. Katie is here. She wasn't expecting to be, but she is here if you have questions. But otherwise, the contract itself is fairly similar to the one we had with Prospera. There were a few updates, but nothing significant as far as how the execution of the actual loan fund itself will go.
All right. So Katie, you're not coming up to present an issue? I'm
Unless you have
sorry.
questions, it's
Okay.
just straightforward.
All right. I didn't, usually you do, so. So do we have any commissioner, I need to open it to the public. Do we have any public comment on resolution number 4847? Any public comment? All right, commissioners, do we have any comments or questions on resolution number 4847?
I think we're putting it where it belongs. It's nice to have it back here. Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? All right, I'm looking forward to it moving back here, and I know it's been a long time of discussing how to, not just the block grant, but how to work with community development and different various based entities along the way. So having it back feels like it's in the right place. So do we have a motion from the commission unless we have more comments?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we pass resolution 4847. I'll second.
Right, we have a motion by Friedman and a second by Maybe. Roll call, please. Yes.
Or
Four. Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. Tonight, we have 4 action items. Our first action item is to discuss, approve, deny, accepting Livingston Tree Board's recommended changes to language in Livingston Municipal Code Ordinance Number 23 and directing staff to submit draft ordinance change. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we don't need to go through the ordinance line by line because we'll bring back an actual proposal to you if you would like to move forward. But I think if you read the letter that was provided by Eric, yeah, it really gets to the crux of the issue. We've known for a long time, and I think Mike, did a good job of explaining that through his comments, that we are going to have a problem with trees. People like to talk about the aging infrastructure of streets and sewer and water, but trees work the same way. They're an aging infrastructure. And so we will need to put some money towards them to, 1, maintain them while we can, but 2, replace them as we move forward. So they've really laid out 2 courses of action. And really that's the crux of the issue tonight is which course of action would you like the staff to go forward and draft for you? Because there's really, right now we currently spend $12,000 to $15,000 a year on tree maintenance. That's parks, boulevards, across the board. That's only going to go up as trees age. That doesn't include the cost we're incurring. You saw the picture of the car that was smashed by the branch. That goes against the city as far as insurance claims go. So that drives up our insurance costs as well. So there's a significant cost associated with maintaining that infrastructure. And right now we have no way to fund it, which is why we start budgeting $12,000 to $14,000 a year for trees. And usually by the time we've executed, it's more like 5 or 6 because we just don't have, it ends up going to streets or other areas that are required because you can always put off pruning a tree another year. But there's costs. And so the question before you tonight is, our ordinance is fairly vague in who's responsible for boulevard trees. So really this just applies to boulevard trees this evening. We have some code that references city landowners that are responsible for trees that are closest to their property. We have some language that references the city's responsibility as far as taking care of them. In execution, we've done a little bit of both over the years. So it's not very clear. So that really is the crux of the decision. And then there's funding issues that come with whichever way you decide to go. Some municipalities make the closest landowner responsible for the boulevard trees. So they would be responsible for trimming, maintaining, getting rid of dead trees, fallen trees, all the maintenance costs that go along with the trees in the boulevard. Um, if that were the case, the cost associated with the city is going to be in enforcement. We would, if we change the ordinance to actually specifically state that, then if people weren't complying with it, that's a code enforcement issue that we would need to have someone go out and look at the trees, sign tickets, assess fines, make sure that people are complying with the code as written. So that's one option. The other option is for the city to take responsibility for all the trees in the boulevard and say, we will maintain them and we will be responsible for them. But if we're going to do that, we probably need to put all the trees in the boulevards on a 5 to 7 year cycle with an arborist to come in and clean them up, trim them, make sure that we have it set so that we don't have problems with the things that Mike was showing, large tree limbs falling off that are a danger to the community, damage to property. So those are the issues. Really, the only funding stream available to that would be to create a tree district. And they exist in quite a few municipalities around Montana. Estimates are anywhere from $20 to $30 a year per household would be enough to fund that. If that's the way you'd like us to proceed, we'll get you specific numbers on what we're looking at. It would work exactly like the current street maintenance district does, street light maintenance district. They would work the same. So they would just be additional property taxes that would be assessed against property owners. But instead of specific property owners being responsible for the trees next to them, the city collectively, the landowners collectively would cover the cost of the maintenance of the boulevard trees. So that's kind of the crux of the issue going forward. We can get into the specifics of the ordinance if you want, but the letter was pretty clear in some of the inconsistencies in the current code. So this is just another attempt to clean up the code and actually make a choice on which way we want to go.
Do we have any public comment on action item A?
My name's Andrew Mitchell. I live at 113 South 9th. I'm a member of the tree board, and I'm an ISA certified arborist and municipal arborist. I think the comment that I'd like to make, while there's many things to be said about this, is that the tree district will always be presented as a tax. But unlike a lot of taxes, when we look at the alternative of the individual homeowner being responsible for probably a $2,000 bill to have a significant tree removed, I prefer to take the alternative viewpoint that it's more of an insurance premium. You pay $30 a year, you pay for 10 or 15 years, you can do the math, you've got $150 or whatever invested. It's time for your tree to come out. The city comes and does it. And so therefore, you are not taking a huge financial hit. As the system is currently laid out right now, it's hit and miss. The city will say, yes, this tree is severely damaged. Eric will do his thing. And that property owner gets the benefit of tax dollars. But another tree may not make the cut or may come at a time when there's a funding shortfall. That property owner has to pay it. So there's an inherent unfairness. So a tree district is very much more to me like an insurance policy than it is a tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Patricia Grabo, 204 East Calendar Street. I have a couple questions. How does this work then if we impose this $30 a year on people in Livingston? Do they vote on it, or just the commission just says this is an additional tax?
Michael, can you explain what a tree district
Sure.
looks like?
Because
for-
it's a district, a taxing district, just like a street maintenance district or a light maintenance district, it will initially have to go to a vote. And once it's
public vote.
established, that's good. Once it's established, the rates change based on the commission's desires. But the initial establishment of the district has to go to a public vote.
Thank you so much to answer that question. The other thing is, how do you deal with places that do not have boulevard trees? I mean, people that do not have boulevard trees will still pay the tax. Is that correct?
please.
As far as the maintenance district goes, it works exactly like the street district and the light maintenance district.
Okay.
People that don't have streetlights still pay into the street light maintenance district. People that don't have paved streets still pay into the street maintenance district. So yes, it doesn't matter if you have boulevard trees, if you don't have boulevard trees. If it's if you're in the tree district, you pay the same rate as everyone else in the tree district.
One other question is, if you are in the downtown, for example, where there are no trees, you still pay into the tax.
Double.
Oh,
So we
Mel.
gotta make it up. somehow.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to hear that. Just kidding.
So it works the same. No matter where you are in the city,
Part of the
everybody
way.
pays in.
It'd be interesting to know how many blocks in the city actually don't have boulevard trees, because I think there's a significant number. If you get to the north side of town, some areas of the north side of town, there's this huge number of places that do not have boulevard trees. I mean, it'd be nice for the public to have that kind of information as well. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Don Platic, 229 South Yellowstone. Those trees are so critical to the community. I mean, I think they rank right up there with the river and the mountains. You lose those trees, it's devastating for everybody. So they certainly need to be protected and maintained. So two proposals have been put in front of you. I think each of them has merit, but I think there's one inherent problem with both of them. So let's use residents being responsible for the trees. Right now, residents are responsible for their properties, but you've got decay and blight all over the town. We've got codes that say you're not supposed to have blight and decay, yet we have it. So if you give the responsibility to the homeowner to maintain the trees, what's going to change? The city doesn't enforce the code, you're going to have blight, decay, and dead trees. So let's go over to the other proposal. Let the city maintain them. Put a tax on it. City maintains the trees. My concern there is we've seen that tax and we don't get the services promised. And I'll just use one that's going to come up right now. Spend a lot of money, get a street sweeper. I guarantee all the streets won't be swept. There'll be an occasional ticket here and there, but we spent a lot of money. We did not get the service we paid for. So that's my concern here. Tax, but are we going to get the service that we pay for? So I think it's the commissioner's responsibility that if you're going to tax, make sure we get the service we pay for. That's the root cause of the problem. I don't really care which solution you take. I think they each have merits. They could each succeed if the root cause is fixed. And the root cause is code isn't enforced, so blight and decay. That's going to affect the trees as well. If the city takes responsibility for it, don't charge us and not do it. I'm just giving you an example. You're going to see it here in the next 2 months. Streets won't get swept. There'll be an occasional ticket. I hope I'm wrong, Michael. Please prove me wrong. But that's what I've seen. So I think it's the commissioner's responsibility to hold the city accountable. If you're going to do this, we got to save the trees. So I'm all for the city doing it. I think if you make them do it, you give them the funds to do it, especially with the little beetle, it'll work. But the commissioners have to hold the city accountable. If you're going to take our money, provide the service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pointed to see the tie.
No.
No.
Sign it once.
Yeah. Any other public comment? All right, commissioners,
Madam Chair.
questions?
I've been on this committee ever since I started the commission, so several years, and working with Mike. So it's a momentous night because we've been talking about this for 7 years. And finally, and John, you're right, is defining it, doing it, and it's so frustrating when it's wishy-washy. And the code is a terrible code. So finally, we'll get there. We we did have The thing here in Livingston a few years ago with enormous success and did a lot of work. There was a fellow named Patrick from Townsend who was one of the state officials. Townsend's got a great program. They have a volunteer group that goes around and trims all the trees. We're a little bigger than Townsend, but I mean, they do something. I think this is our first real good chance to define it and do it. And we got some good people that work for the city. Mike is a volunteer, does an unbelievable job. But finally, we're getting there. So it's very important. And trees are so important. I mean, let's face it. It's a huge part of our makeup. But it has to be defined like everything else. And finally, we did it. So thank you.
Commissioners, anyone else?
Yeah, I'm all for the city taking ownership of all these trees and stuff. It's been vague in the past. I mean, I was issued a citation because my tree wasn't trimmed 8 feet, above the street. Well, I didn't know I had to maintain them because the place I used to live didn't have to, but I did plant the trees as well. I would like to see a tree district established in the city maintaining the trees. The work that's been ongoing is great. I mean, this way it's not hit or miss or piecemeal. It's done uniformly as required. So I'm excited to see something like that go forward. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
I have questions.
Okay.
First, I want to thank the tree board. I think the whole presentation Mike gave was great, really. But the emerald, excuse me, the emerald ash borer is especially terrifying and would be really devastating to our urban forest, or will be, when it impacts Livingston. So I think it's good to be proactive and ahead of the curve on issues like that. That'll be very expensive, however it's funded. I'm curious, do we have arborists on staff for tree maintenance?
We have one certified arborist on staff.
And do we have the equipment necessary already?
We don't have all the equipment necessary, and that would be part of a tree district would go to also to fund equipment, not just trees.
Okay.
And there would also, some would go to private contracts to cover anything the city couldn't cover themselves.
I know this is really early on, but have you done any kind of cost comparison? Like the retroactive paid for by homeowners versus the proactive maintaining? I'm guessing there's a cost difference in the outcome of neglecting a tree versus maintaining a tree.
There's certainly a difference in lifespan if it's properly maintained versus if it's not properly maintained.
Mhm.
So there is a cost savings there. It's really hard to give a solid number because you can't really know how private property owners will maintain their trees. If they maintain them as well as the city does, then it will cost about the same. If they don't, then they're going to have massive one-time expenses as the trees come out. I think the biggest advantage to the city managing it is we can actually do long-range planning where individual property owners aren't going to do long-range planning for the entire city, right?
Mhm.
So if we're in charge of replacing the trees, we can actually come up with a replacement program where we look at, replanting a certain number, especially the ash trees per year, so that we can bring that number from 40 or 50, whatever percent it was, down to a more manageable number before the ash borer actually gets here.
One thing that occurs to me about long range planning, in light of my experience in Montana, I started out in Missoula, and there's this street called Slant Street. It's a Slant Street neighborhood. Can't even remember the name of the street right now. Any of you familiar with Missoula will know the street I'm talking about. It goes past the high school towards, there's some like big box stores down at the end, but it goes next to the Slant Street neighborhood.
Is
It's
it
lined with-
Reserve?
What's that?
Reserve?
I don't think it's Reserve.
Brooks? There.
There you go.
Yep.
It's Brooks. But it's lined with these huge maples, and it's
Mhm.
just this fantastic street. And for a very long time, it's been fantastic. I also have a friend who's an arborist in Missoula. and all those trees are going to die at the same time. And it's going to be so expensive and so sad, like really expensive because these trees are massive on a busy street, but also just devastating to the neighborhood because all the trees are going to die at once because they're the same species. So there's something to the long range planning, like where we're thinking about our grandkids when these decisions get made, and that more insects are coming as our climate is shifting. Right now it's this ash borer. So I think there's some advantages, really long-term savings, thinking big picture like that, that might help influence our decision long-term financial, like what's the best financial, what makes most financial sense long-term with the shared resource. The other question I have, so just as a process question, so the tree board has identified this ordinance, then it goes to city staff to look it over, and then we'll go back to the tree board, or will it come to the commission?
It'll probably just come straight back to the commission. Depending on how it goes, we'll have to not only draft the ordinance, but draft the ballot language if we want to go out to establish the tree district.
Okay. And then that goes to the commission, but obviously the tree board, I assume, would be a part of, they've already been a part of the process of what they want. Okay. So there's been lots of chance for the public to give input on how they feel about, okay. Just want to make sure.
And there will be even more.
And there will be even more. Great. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have about, I suppose some of the stuff would come out in the proposed ordinance, like if there's a tree in the boulevard and the tree falls on a Subaru, who pays the insurance claim? Like right now it's the city.
And
And
doesn't make any sound.
I know. That's what I was thinking, like it makes a sound. I've heard it actually.
I couldn't help
The
but
tree
go
across
there.
the street fell on, I don't know if it was a Subaru, but I heard it and it made a sound. It wasn't the car, but it was like the snow and the weight across North Yellowstone.
Yeah, and that would depend on which way we went. If the city was
Okay.
responsible for maintenance, we'd
it
be
would say-
responsible for the insurance. If the property owner was responsible for the maintenance, they would be responsible for the insurance.
Even as it is now, we're responsible for the
City is,
insurance.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, for the client.
So the people are paying for it either way, really.
Yeah, well, anything the city does, the people
People
pay
are
for.
paying for it, right? So, thank you. I just wanted to make sure like some of those things would get teased out when.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. I do have one thing to add, just
Yes.
information wise, to address Don's concern. I think it's important to realize because it's a tree district, just like the street maintenance district, the money can only go to trees. It can only either go to trees or equipment to help with the trees. It can't be diverted into the general fund. It can't be used for streets or sidewalks or anything else. It has to go to either tree maintenance or equipment for tree maintenance or new trees.
And the tree board likes that idea, I would guess.
Yes, I think they do quite
Yeah.
much.
They're in favor of, yeah, having money to put towards trees. Great.
One statement, I went back to my hometown recently, and they have, it's a prairie town, so it's Williston, North Dakota, built on the prairie, but the elm and the ash trees were everywhere, and now it looks like a prairie town again. So I grew up with a lot of trees, and now there are very few. There's whole neighborhoods without any. And so thinking ahead and planning ahead, which back in the day they weren't planning ahead, and Williston struggles to plan ahead anyway. I would encourage that as a community, that we are thinking ahead. And I know Melissa stated it well, that we're thinking down the road to grandchildren and great grandchildren, and not just whether I like my tree shading something. We have to think about the big picture sometimes as well. So going back to our point tonight, because I feel like if you look at the action item, we went way beyond that with some of the discussion, but it all related to trees. So our first part of this action item is to make a motion to accept the recommended changes, right? And then we can also direct
And direct the
Yes.
staff to.
second to that.
Draft it.
We direct the staff to draft it, but also we can direct the staff to look into how we move forward with a tree district or some considerations on how we fund trees. That would be a recommendation separate from the action item. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm gonna let somebody else
We,
Sounds like
during commissioner comments, we could state it as well, just the recommendation on how we want to move forward, but we can accept the action item as is.
Are you ready?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to accept action item A.
I'll second.
second. Ah, you beat me. Dave.
We have a motion by Newts and a second by Maybe. Roll call, please. Yes.
Or
Four. Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. So if during commissioner comments, we want to say something else, let's put it there. Okay? Next on our agenda is to discuss, approve, deny Michael Inman's application to the City County Board of Health. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So usually these would appear in the consent items, but I pulled this one because I think it's a little precedent setting. So I wanted to make sure we discussed it. Just for your reference, I'm actually starting an initiative with the county right now to rewrite the bylaws for the City County Health Board. I think there's some changes that would probably be useful for all of us. So we're going to sit down and do that over the next few months, probably, certainly after budget season. But that'll come. But as of right now, the city's required to have 2 city residents on the health board, and we do have 1 opening. The board itself published this request for application, so the city staff didn't do that. The board itself did that through the county. The only applicant we have right now is Michael Inman. I have no reservations about Mike's ability to serve on the board, but it is, I think, the first time we've ever appointed a county employee to a city board. So that's, and we don't address that in any of our
Anywhere.
policies. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk through that and make sure there weren't any reservations you had with county employees serving on city boards.
All right. Any public comment? All right. Commissioners, any questions, comments? Warren?
Is that a city county board?
It is a city county board, so there's
So it's
2.
not, I mean, it's not strictly a city board.
No, there's a requirement for 2 city residents, 2 county residents, county commissioner and a city commissioner, which is part of the stuff we're changing. But
and he's a city resident as well.
yes, he is a city resident. So
Well, I'll state that he is a city resident. He's a community member making a request or applying. I can see that being kind of weird sounding, but he lives here. He's part of our community, and I see it as nothing that I'm concerned of or about right now.
Likewise.
I have a sense too that Mike Inman is a very process focused person, and that if there was a conflict, he would bring it to the attention of the board, given that's part of what he would have to do in his job daily anyway. Yeah.
Any other comments? All right, do we have a motion from the commission on,
Yeah, Madam Chair. I make a motion, we,
on action item
approve
B?
action item B. Moving things right along.
Second.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please. Yes.
Or
Four. Four.
Or
Motion passes. Next on our agenda is to discuss scheduling general fund budget workshop. Mr. Cardus.
thank you, Madam Chair. So this is just to get our general fund portion. We will be ready to present it to you next week. And then we will worry about the other funds later on in the month or June. But we're looking for a convenient time that everyone would like to sit down and talk through the budget.
Okay, so give us some timelines as far as the first meeting, 2 hours, 10,
Yeah,
1,
I think 2 hours should be about
Okay.
right.
and then we'll move on to a more finalized budget after.
You will see it if we get through the general fund. You won't see that again until the final budget approval. I think that should be easy enough to do, is to just get through the general fund, and then there will be other meetings for the enterprise funds, ambulance, water, sewer, streets, solid waste, and all the other various funds that we have. So those would be probably a separate meeting at a different time.
Okay.
One separate meeting for all those, not
Yes.
separate meetings for each.
No,
of
one
them.
separate meeting for most of those, depending on how we want to split them out.
My eyes were getting really big thinking that's a lot of meetings.
On it in the past.
How soon can we?
How soon's it going to be
How
ready?
soon, yeah, how soon do we need to? Yeah.
I think cancel that so I can see the. I would say as soon as the 15th, so a week from tomorrow. So 15th, 16th was probably a good range.
There's a planning board meeting, I think the 15th.
There probably is.
Yes, because it's the 3rd.
16th.
Yep, so
Mhm.
that's out for me.
How about the 16th?
I couldn't do anything till 6 p.m.
Fine.
We stay with 60.
The 16th.
16th would
That's
be-
as soon as I could do would be 6 p.m. that day.
Works, 16th works okay for me.
I do like that we're getting it going because June and July, obviously, and we want it before July.
We want at least the initial approved before July.
So yeah, our timeline's a little bit tight. So the 16th at 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in.
Are we calling this the general fund budget workshop?
That is correct.
Putting the fund back in funds? I hope.
Do that at
All right,
6.
so I think this room is booked until 7 that evening, but we can do the West room.
Yeah.
We can just move over to the West room if you'd like.
And also on that day is a Wind Rider open house in this room at 1 p.m. So please show up and support and have some snacks and stuff.
Yeah, I saw that one. That's on the same
Same day, yeah.
16.
All right. So what is that one on 1 o'clock same day?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an open house.
All right. So our first budget meeting will be scheduled for the 16th at 6 o'clock of May. And 1 o'clock, there's another meeting. All right. Moving on in our agenda, we have our last action item to discuss schedule commissioners listening sessions. Mr. Cardus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that is just threw this item on there because I'm not sure the last time you guys had one. And I know in our strategic plan, we were looking to hold at least one every month or so. So just looking if you'd like us to notify one for you in the near future.
Like the Saturday listening sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin, you've sort of spearheaded.
Yeah, I've
these
been falling
after-
down on the job big time on that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And actually, the 11th is the second Saturday of the month, and that's generally when we hold them. I will be out of town this coming Saturday, so I can't do it.
Hmm.
But there's no reason why it couldn't be done on the 18th either. So we're not beholden to. All I have to do is just clear it with Michael McCormick, unless you want to have it some other venue.
Yeah, there's other places.
Right. So
Do we want to schedule one for the 18th? We probably should.
Yeah.
And I could go, or one of us, I could go, I guess, on one of them anyway.
Yeah, schedule one for the 18th, 7 a.m.
And we will notice it so as many of you as would like can show up.
Right. So time looks good. 8:30? 9? 9? Sounds good.
When do you usually do them? 8:30?
Yeah, 8:30.
Great. Listening session on the 18th at 9 o'clock. All right. Moving on to city manager comments.
Oh, I have plenty of time to talk tonight. It's so exciting. I'll cover a quick couple of things for you, and then I'm gonna do a quick demo on the city website to show you some of the new features we have, just so you can see where those are. First of all, I was talking about the street sweeper earlier. If you got my email, you will know that we are down street employees this summer. Usually we have 5 seasonal employees. Currently we have 1. So we are taking the month of May off of street sweeping. We've already done the initial street sweeping. We picked up about 35 tons of debris off the street so far this spring.
That looks good.
Yes, but we will not be doing our standard residential street sweeping until June. Hopefully we'll be back in the business of having more seasonals by then. But more importantly, we should be through the pothole patching, which is what we're having the street crew focus on at this time of the year.
Needs it.
It was a tough winter on the streets, so they'll be out doing most of the pothole patching. We'll pick up street sweeping again once that's accomplished. So that's a quick update on that. Don't think there are any other huge items, but I'm gonna take my microphone with me and walk down to the computer quick. This is why we got wireless microphones. Can I steal the computer quick? Technology is a wonderful thing. So in accordance with the strategic plan, we've added some things to the website, and I just wanted to give you a quick example of where they are. Additionally, we did get the results back from the survey that Ballard King did on the new Civic Center options. I'll be getting that out to you later this week. In general, it was very positive feedback from the community. So a couple of new features under the I Want To tab. If you look down here, we actually have see public notices. So any public notice that we put out for any meeting, no matter where it is here under the public notices documents. You can see there's 20 of them. So you can already see we have the public hearing for the zoning commission in here. There's a public hearing for tonight's variance request is in here. So all the public notices that go into the newspaper will also appear on that site. So if people are just wanting to track public notices, they're all right there. They don't have to go anywhere else. Also new to the city manager page. We did a little more about community outreach here because that's one of the focuses in the strategic plan. But this next section, I think Commissioner Newt will specifically want to know what's happening with city boards and committees. So there's a list of them. You can send an email to this email updates at livingstonmontana.org. Tell us which boards you're interested in. And then when notices or information comes out with those boards, you're on the email list. You'll get all the information that goes with that board. So you'll get notified when agendas go out. You'll get notified when there's going to be a public hearing, whatever it is. If you're interested in, you'll see that right there. And then additionally down here, you'll see there's a link to the city office's map. We are all over. But you can tell it gives you a nice little explanation of where everything is. And then if you go to one and you click on it, it actually will tell you the phone number, what's there, and if they have a page on the website, you can click on it and it'll take you right to the website. Because I have about 4 or 5 people a week stop in my office to find this out, we also put the driver's license exams and renewals on there, which is a state office. But hey, if you're looking for it, it's on the city website. Feel free to go find it. So that's a neat little feature that we added to the website. And if you haven't checked out our community resources page, this is something we added, I think, a little over a month ago. You can go through, and if you're looking for specific resources in the community, homelessness shelter, legal advocacy resources, mental health resources. You can click on any of these and it'll give you a list of local organizations that you can get support from these are all external to the city. So DPHHS, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, Learning Partners, Youth Dynamics. So if you are in need in the community and you're looking for some supportive services, you can go to that community resources page, and by category, it'll tell you what's available in the community outside of city resources. So there you go. That's just a quick tour of what's available on the website.
Can I ask you questions?
You can.
So for the email, is that and yes, I think that's great. I do like it. Thank you. So folks can sign up and say they just want to get like tree board updates, and they'll get tree board updates. But if they want to get all updates, I mean,
They just list whichever ones they want.
okay, so
So
it's just for boards.
it's everything that's listed under that. They just put the ones they're interested in the email that they send.
Okay.
And then they will get added to the email list for that topic. So if you send 4 topics, you'll be added to 4 email lists, but you'll only get those emails when something happens with that topic. So instead of having just one email that lists everything that happens in the city, you sign up specifically for those boards. And then if there's something for that board, it gets sent to that list.
I'm just anticipating the next time there's snow, somebody's going to want updates from Public Works. They just need to watch Facebook, probably like the Public Works page. And they can
Facebook and the
see.
Public Works page is the
Great.
best place right now.
I just wanted to make sure that I understood. And then I like the map too. That's great. What else was I going to ask you? You showed us the map. You showed us
Public notices.
how do people get on the list if they want their organization on the list of city services that are not city services?
Sure. If they just call the main number 6,000
Okay.
and talk to Faith, she can get them added.
That's great. Thank you for doing that so quickly.
Thank you. Melissa, you're up.
I'll start the ball rolling with the tree talk. I would like to see more information from the city regarding a tree district and what that might look like. Given the recommendation from the tree board in the comments from people on the tree board. Is that all you need for that, Darrell?
Michael. So bring us options. So, like
Like a cost estimate. kinda
costs,
is like what you're looking for
plans.
Yeah, I mean,
numbers.
it sounds like it's going to be hard to compare numbers, but I think that could be useful. Because like you said, people pay for it either way. But there's probably a way where it's less startling to pay for it and more startling. So if you had numbers, that would be useful. But I understand that those might be really hard to get given the type of issue that it is.
I think what we can provide is at least an estimate of what we would spend a year on tree maintenance and how that would look, what a cycle looks like, how much we would spend in arborist, what equipment we'd still need. We can kind of give an overview of how that would work.
Especially treating the trees with the ash borer, for that,
It's going
what
to be
does that
really
cost
expensive
even?
when that
Yeah.
hits Livingston. It's for whoever has to pay for it. So it'd be great to be proactive.
Yeah, that's,
The other thing I want to do, shifting gears, is thank Jonathan at the Enterprise. I know you've been working really hard to cover the most pressing topics that come up at these meetings. I just want you to know that I have gotten your tenure at the Enterprise. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from local residents, but also with my work, actually, my work outside of the commission. Statewide, people are really interested in what you write about the greater Yellowstone ecosystem. So you've really put Livingston on the map in a lot of ways. And I want to wish you luck, since this is the last commission meeting we're going to see you at. Wish you luck for whatever your next career adventure is after the Enterprise. And that's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Warren.
Well, other than seconding the comment about Jonathan, I don't have too much else to add. Thank you.
Mel.
I want to wish all the gals in the audience and out there, good Mother's Day, safe journeys, and if they're traveling. And also, I want to thank Jonathan too. I think we've had the best coverage in several years since I've been on the commission, and he's doing some good work. And I appreciate that. And on behalf of the tree board, I want to thank the commissioners for finally moving this thing off a dime and get going. We have done a lot of inventory work in the past years, studies and things like that, inventory of trees, and there's been a lot of work that's gone in the last few years. So we do have some data and numbers. So we're looking forward to it. And Mike has been a super guy. Does a lot for the city. I yield.
Thank you for
But
your fair and honest reporting, Jonathan, and reporting and not editorializing. Yeah, I want to make one more comment on the trees. I grew up on a street that was actually featured in Time magazine in 71, 72 due to the Dutch elm disease that came through. It was a brick street, beautiful canopy. All the trees were the same age, of course, as you're talking about Missoula. And that street again has a beautiful canopy, but it's mixed with maples, Norways, and like that, and trees of that sort. So it'll never have a devastating hit like it did before. So yeah, I really would like to see it move forward with a tree district, and because they are important, they add so much value to the neighborhoods. I yield.
I have a couple of things. Jonathan, we're going to miss you. I'm not sure why you would want to leave these exciting meetings, but I've seen you back there on your phone. Just saying. So one of the things I do want us to just get an update on is ordinance enforcement and the planning for this summer. I know we were waiting on an officer, and then we're waiting a little more, and so I don't know where we're at. So what do we have planned for ordinance enforcement for the summer, in particular, parking?
So right now
ticketing?
we filled 2 of our 3 vacancies on the police department. They will have to go to the academy. That'll be a process, and then we'll have to actually assign a code enforcement officer. So my guess is July to August. Hopefully, we'll have something. Until then, we'll have to keep doing as we're doing and being able to catch it as we can with the on-duty patrol officers. But we won't have a specific code enforcement officer probably until the end of summer.
All right, great. And another thing that I have asked at previous meetings, and I want to make sure we're thinking ahead, is any conflicts for this summer because of meetings. Like our first meeting in July is the 2nd of July, and that is parade day. And we usually don't have meetings on that day, but it's really only, we're just meetings away. We're like 4 meetings before we are, or less actually, before some people may be gone. So is there any conflicts or problems with people, commissioners attending meetings coming up this summer?
I can't quote you on that.
I gave you dates that I'm going to be traveling, but I think I should be on the ground unless there's a flight delay, and I can call in if I need to. And I can work with Michael if I need to do paperwork or something.
That was which one was that again?
That's
16th?
July, the 9th. You said if we have to bump the.
So in July, and Michael, you can maybe start thinking ahead on this because often we have more of a business oriented meeting. And I don't know what it will look like, but we have 5 Tuesdays in July. So something to think about. Last year we did both. We just moved it 1 week ahead, and then we had 2 meetings. The year before, we had 1 meeting, and we had 4 Tuesdays that month. So I think it depends on what work we need to get done when.
I think when we hit our second, probably our second meeting in June, we'll know pretty well what needs to get accomplished. I would say if there's not anything pressing, if we could if we would just do 1 meeting in July, that would probably be okay. We might have to do 1 special meeting just to finish up the budget if we haven't finished that by then. But other than that, I would think we'll try and get everything in June that needs to be done by the end of July, or at least by the third Tuesday in July. So we could schedule something for the 16th or the 23rd, I think, and wrap up all the business we need to get done in July.
Okay. And then I am actually going to be gone, Quentin. So I will be gone on the 18th of June, unless you moved some meetings around. I've never missed one as the chair, but I wanted to make sure you all know that I'll be gone. And my biggest worry is that we won't have 2 commissioners here. And I don't think that's a good representation of us or of the importance of stating your ideas and voting. So I want to make sure whenever we are going to be gone, that we think ahead. So I will be gone on the 18th, unless we had only 1 meeting in June for some
Do
reason.
you have any intention of like calling in or?
I know that I can't at where I am. I could move. It's like in a somewhat isolated cabin with no internet.
You just enjoy yourself.
I know. But I could go to the library.
We'll just come to you.
And yes, it's Oregon. I could go to the library, so I won't necessarily not or say I won't participate.
Mhm.
But also, if there's big issues that I really need to be thoughtful and on board, I need to participate. So, other than that,
Terrell, we are going to Ireland on the 14th of August with our daughter Lori and her husband.
will you call in?
No.
Yeah, we'll be gone for a couple weeks.
Between pubs.
That'll be breakfast though.
So you'll miss the 20th of the meeting on the 20th?
Yeah, I would think so.
I know.
Although that's Relly's birthday, so I don't know.
You'd miss it anyway.
Okay. So we are ready for adjournment. Do I have a motion from the commission?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Friedman and a second by Schwartz. Roll call, please. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Motion passes. This meeting of the Livingston City Commission is adjourned at 7:26
Oh, we gotta stand
PM.
up.
You can do it.
We changed everything on poor Lisa since the last time.
Not sure about accepting.